Let's get this out of the way right off the bat. The movie's called Jason Takes Manhattan. Most of the movie takes place on a dilapidated tugboat. Jason doesn't actually get to New York until about an hour into the film, and there's only one scene that was actually filmed in New York. Everything else was shot in Vancouver. You want to know another fact? The movie came out in 1989. That was over 30 years ago. You would think that over the course of 30 years, people would be more forgiving about its broken promises and accept it as the first film to get him out of the woods and somewhere new. I think that's why I like this movie more than anyone has a right to. It puts Jason in a new location, and yet it still manages to feel like a Friday the 13th film. For the most part. Kane Hodder's back, making him the only actor to play the role more than once, which is why I feel a lot of people like his Jason the best. Let's talk about Jason first of all. After all, by this point, this is his series. He's not as imposing as he was in New Blood. His clothes are still torn, but all that damage he accumulated in prior films doesn't seem to be there. This is another one where continuity from past movies didn't seem to matter. Kane Hodder isn't bad, he gives us what we want, but I have a major problem with the editing of this film. Yeah, this is the film where Jason teleports. He just randomly appears wherever the hell he feels like, and he does it all the freaking time. No matter where the victim runs to, Jason always manages to beat them to the finish line. In this movie, he doesn't even have to chase them. I mean, for God's sakes, there's a scene where a guy tries to escape by climbing the crow's nest. Jason is clearly standing beneath him. But then we cut to the guy mid-climb, and somehow Jason manages to get in front of him to throw him off. And what about this scene on the dance floor? Why are there multiple Jasons just standing there? In truth, I don't think there are multiple Jasons, and I'm really not sure if this was a creative choice made by the filmmakers, because it just seems like lazy editing. And yeah, I know that in the video game, Jason has the ability to literally teleport around the map, but either way, it's really cheap and takes all the suspense out of the movie. You know Jason's going to kill everyone because no matter how fast they run, Jason will somehow get there faster. The characters are as one-dimensional as ever. Here, they're barely given any screen time before they're killed off. Most of the movie takes place on the boat, so all of the characters are members of the high school, even the two that are killed off in the beginning scene at Crystal Lake. But there are a lot of bodies, and more so than any other entry, the kills were brutally butchered by the MPAA. It's a shame, because I like most of the kills in this movie, but the lack of gore is really apparent here. And because Jason just isn't as intimidating for this one, it takes the bite out of any edge the movie could have had. The main girl is Rennie, who, like Chris in Part 3, had a chance encounter with Jason as a boy. I'm begging you, if you want any chance at enjoying this movie, don't put any thought into the chronology. It won't make any sense, and if you're one of those people who needs their slasher movies to have lore, this movie is really going to piss you off. First of all, according to the mythology set forth by the first movie, Jason was originally a boy who died in the 50s. Assuming this movie takes place in 1989, Rennie's encounter with boy Jason should have probably taken place around the time of the first movie in 1980. At that point, Jason would have been fully grown. So, why is he a little boy? All throughout the film, they do this thing where Rennie has visions of boy Jason haunting her. This has to be a hallucination because we know the actual Jason is roaming around the boat. So why is she having these visions, and why are they so important to everything else that's going on? Third, and this was something I didn't notice until my most recent viewing, but each time she sees boy Jason, his appearance changes. It's almost like he starts off almost normal, which again goes against the existing mythology, and then he deteriorates into a more twisted-looking Jason as the film goes on. It's as if the filmmakers were trying to do this thing where every time Jason kills someone, his kid self, the one Rennie is seeing, is becoming more evil. This is just a really stupid idea that stops the film in its tracks. This movie is Jason Takes Manhattan. It has the number 8 in its title, a Roman numeral 8. That's when the studio was so embarrassed they made so many sequels that they stopped using actual numbers. And why did they keep numbering these movies? They should have used subtitles like Bride of Jason and Ghost of Jason. Because of the nature of Jason, the quick kills, and the lack of any suspense, this feels more like an action movie. Since Part 6, the series was evolving into that, but all remnants of what made these movies scary just aren't there. And still, I'm afraid to say, I kind of like it. It's entertaining, and while the stuff on the boat is tired, at least it's a nice change of pace. As far as New York, it's your stereotypical portrayal of the city during that time period. It's dirty, run down, it's filled with bums, and you just know you're going to have a scene in a subway car. Even Scream 6 had a scene in a subway car. As little of the movie takes place in New York, it's still the best part of the movie. My favorite kill is where Julius boxes Jason on a rooftop.
Take your best shot. Motherfucker.
No, they didn't really take advantage of the location like Madison Square Garden, where the Julius boxing match was supposed to happen, or the Statue of Liberty, but you have to remember where this franchise started. Even this movie had a pretty low budget of just $5 million. See, that's the problem with this kind of franchise. As a series grows and becomes more popular, obviously you'd want to change it up and give the audience something different. The concept of Jason running around New York City is an excellent idea, but they had to keep the budget manageable. And that's the main reason why this film just couldn't deliver on that promise. Why anyone would expect that is kind of crazy when you consider we had 7 movies that were all shot somewhere in the woods. So I can't be too hard on it for not being set completely in the city. But I will say if any movie would benefit from a flashy remake, this would be the one. If only someone was crazy enough to do it. One more thing we have to address is the ending. It's probably one of the worst endings to any of these movies, even though they did try something different. I mean, of all the things they've tried to kill Jason, why would toxic waste be the thing to do it? I will say the look of Jason unmasked is ridiculous, especially when he roars like a velociraptor. And when he transforms back into little boy Jason, it doesn't make any lick of sense. First, why is he not the Mongoloid Jason we've come to know him to be? And second, I can't think of a second, but I will put my own spin on it. These movies were coming out every year during the 80s, with the exception of 83 and 87. After this movie came out, there wasn't a Jason movie for 4 years. So at the time, Jason returning to his childhood form seemed like a fitting closure to the series. I'm not saying it was executed well, but if this was the last one ever made, I don't know how else I'd like to see Jason go out. Obviously, all future films ignored this ending, which was probably for the best. But as botched as this ending is, it certainly is interesting, and I find it to be one of the more entertaining entries in the series. It's not for everyone, but if you're going to put Jason outside of the lake, I could think of worse places than New York City. Like outer space. Yeah, they'd never do anything that desperate.